This is something that I did at this point, and this is often what I recommend to young dudes. Like, don't get away from the theory stuff. You don't need this stuff as much as you think. But like, please stop reading books all the time. That's just left-brained jargonism, making you worse, getting you more trapped. You're not only in your left brain, you're starting to build a palace of jargon around it that's becoming like a prison. But instead, I highly encourage most dudes to just go out and just face your fears, man. It's so simple, because fear shocks your right brain into coming online. You'll meet the unconscious. You'll start individuating if you just face your fears quite a lot. It's very, very simple. And then if, for example, I hit upon the idea of reading my dreams, another very, very simple thing you can do. Very, very simple concept. And 100% you can go deep into that stuff, and it yields incredible results because it gets the two sides of the hemisphere talking together. But then the question becomes, like, that's some very, very basic stuff, and I think that's that's good enough for most dudes to do for an extended period of time. I don't think you need to worry about that stuff. A lot of young stuff is geared towards people over 40 years old. Please keep that in mind. But like, for a young dude, I know a lot of people be young boyos, and even the young girlerinos. Like, you wanna understand the context of this stuff. The simple idea is you're just trying to build a relationship with this right brain, and it contains certain powers. And what happens is you first meet it, or it's there with you, and it shows up as the shadow. But then over time, as this relationship evolves, as you come to understand fear, as you face more fear, you'll start to get access to something else. And then the right brain and the left brain, maybe the wiring, God knows why this happens, but maybe the wiring gets stronger, so you have more ready access to the right brain, and you can sort of call it to come help you when you need it, like a guardian angel. You learn certain meditation techniques or exercises that will instantly get your right brain switching together, and we'll talk about this later. Like, there's plenty of evidence to show that you can train yourself to get your right brain and your left brain synchronized together at will, as opposed to unconsciously when you're running around and it only appears to you as a shadowy source of fear. And this is precisely what Jung said about the shadow, is that it's not necessarily real. It has no like body. It's just the sort of reflection of your ignorance, that type of thing. It's like something haunting you, because that's sort of what it is. You're the ego running around, and it's just watching you, which is so strange. It's watching, and when it sees something it doesn't like, it kind of slaps you and says, be careful, that type of thing. But anyway, the anima, the right brain presents itself in a new way, as the guardian angel, as the muse, as the Greeks would have understood it. Jung experienced this as the anima. He called it the soul. And this is different, because this is giving you power now at this point. This is a different type of vibe. It's not the same as the other stuff. It's the right brain is now coming on, presenting itself as something different. It's changing its clothes. I'll do a whole video on the anima to talk about this in the context of the Red Book and some of the ways that this stuff appears. It's a very, very interesting thing, and especially when you add this right brain grounding to it, because it actually makes a lot of sense. The right brain comes online, fills you full of animating power, and it gives you the skills that the right brain has. And it's almost like you've upgraded to the point where you have this stuff ready at hand. You've now got this stuff, like, in your suit. It's no longer something that you don't have access to. You're no longer stuck in the left brain's specific problems. The left brain, for example, is quite impotent, not necessarily the creative one. It's very, very orientated towards models and words, but not fertile in that type of sense. It's prone to delusion. It's prone to anger over like stupid things, like people arguing with you and stuff like this. But of course, it's fantastic at feeling good and all these type of things. But of course, you spend a lot of time with this type of stuff. You integrate this anima, and this is such a dangerous concept. While I'll do a separate video on it, because a lot of dudes I talk to, again, they get into the Jungian cult and they start to represent their sterile and impotent relationship with women with this sort of Jungian idea of the anima. Let's look at maybe this more scientific place of looking at it and sort of say, okay, well, this seems to look like the right brain coming online and giving us these powers of perception, the powers of creativity and image thinking, all things that are very obvious when you think about it. The super processing power of that color flame, that dreaming flame that I was talking about. Of course, what does the anima possess? What does the right brain possess? Higher empathy, a supreme ability to recognize faces, something the left brain literally cannot do. Therefore, social skills. If you get relationship and social skills, the world opens up for you. It's one of the most important things of all. And this is the centerpiece of it. The intuition and feeling of guidance. And so maybe when this relationship gets strong enough, maybe the right brain will stop appearing to you as like a guy, a boyo dressed in black, an Irishman, in an IRA suit, being like, you're fucking gonna die now, boyos. Instead, it starts to appear to you as like a woman, a guardian angel, a muse. And maybe this is how the right brain sees herself inside your head. Again, I'll talk about this more. Or maybe, as Jung proposed, the right brain in women sees itself as a male. Who knows? These things are very, very interesting when you study it. And Jung has given us some cool things to check out. But you can see where I'm going with this. And it's a very, very strange way of looking at things, but it seems like it makes sense. Then, of course, some of the later stages of this, something that doesn't come till a lot later, but it's obviously there in its seeds. But eventually you get to a point where you connect with what Jung would call the self, the organizing principle within it, because this right brain, it's a very, very strange way of thinking about it, but it's not really a woman. It's not really a thing at all. It's not really like a living human. Like we personify it like the way the Greeks personified the gods, but the right brain is sort of an organizing force. Like it's a big blob of jelly, it's not necessarily a person. And so the way it might present itself to us at this point might be a lot more, like at the very, very late stages, it might reveal itself finally for what it truly is. It might actually present itself as like an abstraction or a power. Or maybe it understands something about the world and it shows you the power it draws from. Maybe it's showing you God. I don't really know. But nonetheless, eventually what Jung notices is that this self appears in this end state of the individuation process, and it comes along with new powers. It comes along with the highest powers. Maybe when you've finally integrated the left brain and the right brain together to a very, very high degree, something about the brain changes. And we'll talk about this in a moment. And you get what we say is the final intuitive power. Then, of course, what is the big tagline that Nietzsche and Jung often talk about is like, become who you are. The whole idea of the self is become who you are. And that's you becoming your instinctive self, fulfilling your pattern. You might be a spider. You might be a dog. You might be a lion-typed person. And so you may as well get back in touch with your right brain and let your right brain, let yourself give you your destiny. Don't run around like an ego and try to become Pavarotti when you're not Pavarotti. Instead, go into your right brain and let it show you what you are and let it lead. Allow it to be the leader. And this is, of course, the premise in Ian McGilchrist's idea, the master and its emissary. You need to learn that your ego is submissive. You must cuckold your left brain to your right brain. Your right brain must lead, and they work together as a team. That is the essential thing.